Okay, good morning. We'll give the last few folks who want to come in and grab a seat, like Adam there, who just rolled out of bed. I know he had a rough night last night, so I'll... Did you get arrested, or no? Okay, good. So, so hi, good morning. My name is Jeffrey McManus. I run the Yahoo Developer Network. I'm here today to give you a little bit of information about what we're doing with web services, AJAX, building next-generation web applications, and so forth. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to break this talk up into a couple of different sections. I've got a ton of things to show you today, so I'm just going to really jump right into it, not a lot of preliminaries. But what I wanted to do is give you a little bit of information about what I have planned so you have an idea as to what's going on. I will be around for just a few minutes afterwards for questions, and then Dan of my team, I don't know if Dan is in the room here. He was arrested. Okay, excellent. That must, we'll see what we can do about that. But basically, Dan will be around, and we'll have a table set up somewhere. They sort of threw this together at the last minute, but they're going to be information tables around lunchtime where you'll be able to ask questions and that sort of thing. And I won't be there, but Dan will be there, so I have to catch a plane. So basically, what we're going to do is talk a little bit about the web services platform and Yahoo as a software development platform. This is pretty new. If you haven't heard about us yet, it's pretty much been only in the last year that we've been building out Yahoo as a development platform, but we've been moving pretty quickly to open up all of Yahoo. And as you probably know, Yahoo is not just one thing. It's not just web search. It's not just mail. There's a whole bunch of different aspects to Yahoo, probably 50 or so properties, different types of things that you can do with Yahoo. And the mission of my team is to sort of roam freely across the company and open up all of Yahoo to the extent that we can to third-party developers using web services and other technologies as well too. So we'll talk about a little bit about what we've done in that area so far, as well as some forward-looking stuff, some things that will be coming up in the near future, some technologies and some new APIs and other things as well too. And then I'm also going to throw in here something that was kind of ambitious for me. I don't purport to be a big AJAX or Atlas expert, but I felt like it was really important, especially because Atlas is such a neat technology, and there are some interesting implications for application development, particularly if you're utilizing web services. I wanted to take a crack at an interesting AJAX application that also utilizes our technology as well. So I whipped up something kind of basic. It's not dazzling, but it does show you how to use Atlas with our stuff. And so that'll be something that'll hopefully give you a little bit more exposure to Atlas as a development environment, in addition to showing off some interesting things that we do with web services there. One of the things I should also mention too, and I wasn't going to do a demo on this, but I felt like it was important to sort of throw in here. What we've got here on my desktop, you can actually see a couple of these. These are our version of Microsoft gadgets, and we call these widgets. You might have known this as a product called Confabulator. So I just wanted to get this out of the way because I use one of these when I speak now. This is the Confabulator kitchen timer. And up here is a little thing that I call Stock Sphere, and this basically gives you stock quotes from a bunch of different companies. So the Stock Sphere guy is going to go back to the background here, but the kitchen timer is going to tell me how much time I have left to yabber up here. But just wanted to mention that this exists, and it's up at widgets.yahoo.com. In a lot of ways, and I don't know if any of you were in here for the demo we did yesterday for the sidebar gadget for Yahoo Music. It was a very, very cool, much more polished than anything I could have put together. Microsoft gadget for Vista, and was basically giving you the ability to do music search and play music and control the Yahoo Music engine. Very, very cool platform. We're pretty agnostic, and we like the idea of being able to get access to your Yahoo stuff, wherever you want, whether that's on Windows or the Mac or in a web browser or on a client application or in a mobile device or whatever. So ultimately, I had a guy come up to me after the talk yesterday, after the gadgets talk, and says, so who's going to own the widget space? And I was like, I don't care. It doesn't really bother me. Ultimately, it's just another way to express yourself and another way to, get access to your content in a way that makes sense to you. One interesting thing that we should probably mention about our widgets is that they do work on both Mac and Windows, and that's the big advantage today, in addition to the fact that we have thousands of these guys at widgetgallery.com set up already. But at any rate, let me go back to, some of the goals that we have set out for ourselves. We really started opening up and having a cross-Yahoo developer program in April of last year. So we're almost coming up on our one-year anniversary. And in fact, it also occurred to me this morning that this is actually personally my 10th anniversary of giving presentations to Microsoft developers and starting back in the VB days. And I don't know if any of you go back that far, but I'd like to describe myself as the guy who forgot more about VB than most people will ever know. But yeah, my very first talk like this in front of Microsoft developers was at VBits Orlando in 1996. So we've gone a long way, haven't we, from creating client-server applications to web-enabled AJAX applications. This is where we are today, and ultimately the idea here is that we want to be able to extend the reach of Yahoo to any device, any website, any application, and to grow a developer community around that. And so that's the objective. And we do that by providing these web services APIs, but also providing tools, libraries, other things as well too. These are the things that are important to us because we realize that without good information about this stuff, it's hard to get started without good documentation and so forth. So we really want to grow a developer community around our stuff, and we're doing this today. We have tens of thousands of developers who utilize our widget platform, our web services, our UI libraries, and I'll demonstrate some of those a little bit later. The momentum, as I mentioned, has really gone from almost nothing at the beginning of last year to a pretty impressive number of developers. And one of the nice things about that is that whether you're using Yahoo Maps or Yahoo Search APIs or Confabulator, people tend to get their questions answered pretty quickly in our forums. We use Yahoo Groups as a way of supporting developers. And we're going to work hard now and in the future to keep making that easy for developers who want to build into this ecosystem. The notion of an ecosystem is pretty important, sometimes referred to as a platform. I like the ecosystem metaphor because it implies that there is sort of birth and growth and dynamic stuff as opposed to just sort of a platform, which to me sort of invokes the idea of something that's made of wood or girders or something. But ultimately, in addition to providing these technologies for developers, the objective is also to, what are we doing here? Oh, I see what I did here. The idea is to provide also business opportunities as well too, and I'll talk more in a minute about that. But this is just a graph that sort of shows what we've done with Maps, and this is community growth. This is people coming and joining the Maps developer community. We had our first release in June of last year, and that was a really simple Maps API. In fact, it's so simple we called it the Simple Maps API because we're very creative that way. And then in November of 2005, we sort of unleashed the big cannon of Flash Maps, AJAX Maps, APIs, geocoding APIs, traffic APIs, a couple other things for Maps. And as you can see, the community really took off. We experienced pretty phenomenal growth in terms of the number of developers that are utilizing our Maps and coming into the groups. Let me, while I'm on Maps here, give you a really quick example of what people are doing with this today. I'm going to go into an example of a simple Maps. So I have a 4.5-year-old kid, which means it's a very magical time for us. It means that in the fall she'll be going to kindergarten, very exciting time. One of the sort of interesting and weird things about elementary school in the city of San Francisco is that you apply. It's kind of like New York does this, I think, too, where you don't necessarily get into the elementary school that's closest to your house. You apply to a list, and you have to figure out which one you want to go to, and they all have different programs and different qualities and stuff. And so my wife and I commute in the morning all the way down the peninsula, down to Yahoo this way, and we realized it would make a lot of sense for us to be able to choose a school that was not only a good school, but also convenient to our commute. So our house is like around here, and you can see that Fairmount is the school that my kid actually wound up getting into, which is our first choice. Woo! But ultimately, it was very, very useful for us to be able to see, what are these, oops, I accidentally zoomed. Very useful to be able to see which schools are close to our house, and I'll show you how this guy was built as I pan over here. Now, one of the key things about the simple map is that it is no code necessary. And so the way this guy works is that you post you basically put a XML file on a web server anywhere. In fact, you don't even need a web server to do this. It's possible to do this without having any web server at all. But I'll show you what the XML looks like. For those of you who are RSS aficionados, you may recognize this. This is RSS 2.0 with a couple of map-specific extensions. What we did is we did a namespace for additional tags that give you the ability to say what is the address, what is the city, what is the state. You can also throw in longitude, latitude. You can put in a reference to icons, colors, additional notes, which we call descriptions, and other things as well too. And you basically sort of throw that all together, put it in an RSS file, stick it on a web server somewhere. You can see where mine is being hosted right there. And then you create a URL that refers to it. So you can see that you're making a reference here in the URL field to api.maps.yahoo.com, and then an app ID, which you can get from our website, which is developer.yahoo.net, and then another reference to the URL of the XML file. So Yahoo Maps will then sort of go out, take a look at the XML file, and we'll retrieve that information, and then we'll plot up to 100 points on a Yahoo map. So pretty fun, very simple. One of the things about this, though, is that it doesn't use the latest version of Yahoo Maps. It actually uses a version that's one version out of date. One of the things that we also did in November, in addition to providing additional APIs for developers and other products for maps, is we revised Yahoo Maps itself around a Flash and AJAX model. So you can see you got a lot of interesting things going on here in terms of usability, smoothness. It not only looks a lot better, but it's a lot easier to use, I think, anyway. One of the innovative things with this kind of interface over here is that you have a mini map. So if you want to move very quickly to another part of San Francisco, you can see it's just one click away, and you can drag this guy around. There's Golden Gate Park. So pretty nice. One of the neat things about the way this is put together is that everything that you see here is accessible and programmable from the developer perspective. The only thing that we're missing actually today is driving directions, but we want to provide that soon. Ultimately, though, if you want to go ahead and utilize either the Flash interface or an AJAX interface to be able to create your own Maps applications, you can do that, and it's pretty straightforward to do. It's going to be either JavaScript or ActionScript, depending on whether you're using AJAX or Flash. But let me show you a couple of examples of what we put together to sort of put this guy through its paces. This is a application that we call Local Events Browser, and it's actually pulling up a lot of information. So I'm going to give it a second to load here. I actually should have spun this thing up before I got on stage here. But while this thing is spinning up, I'm going to go to a page for a tool that I built using Excel. This is called Yahoo Map Maker for Microsoft Excel. This is applying 1987 style Visual Basic for applications programming techniques to Web 2.0 paradigm. And basically what I realized was that even in a world in which we can make doing a maps mashup as easy as opening a text file, a text editor, and typing in geo-RSS locations, it might be the case that, say, my real estate agent doesn't want to do that and may not own a web server and all that kind of stuff. So I created this tool that basically just lets you put in a stack of addresses into an Excel spreadsheet. Click one button, and then it'll generate the XML for you. And then you click another button, and it'll post that to the web, and it'll give you a maps mashup that is exactly like what you saw here. Not here, but the school mashup that I showed you before. In fact, the school mashup, this XML right here, was actually generated from that Excel tool. Hand coding 80 different school names and addresses wasn't the kind of thing that I thought would be a good way to spend my afternoon. But at any rate, that's a tool. It's free. It's for you to use. And if you want to use these, that's there for you. Let's take a look at the local events browser. Now you can see how this works. You've got an interesting set of pieces of data sort of put together here. You can see the Yahoo map, and it has all the behaviors of the Yahoo map that you see on maps.yahoo.com, but you're also seeing locations and events being highlighted on the map. So I have the ability to click on one of these guys, get information about the location, and then to be able to go through and say, okay, I can see what events are going on in my neighborhood or in this area that I plan to be traveling to, that sort of thing. And then down here I've got a calendar that lets me go forward or backward in time to be able to see what events are going on and what days. Tag-based navigation as well too, so if I just want to see museums or if I just want to see music, all that kind of stuff, that's all in there. And that is available online at api.local.yahoo.com/eb/demo, the events browser. This is sort of a prototype. This isn't a product, but it's publicly available, and you can take a look at it, and the source code, of course, is all there if you just do a view source, one of the nice things about AJAX. Okay, so there's maps. I want to talk about some of the other web services that we provide. I'll come back to maps in a second, too, because I want to go into a little bit more depth and show you a few more examples. But one of the interesting things we're doing with search web services is providing very granular access to all different kinds of web searches, image searches, video searches, and so forth. I'll go through these really quickly because some of them are not super intuitive if you're not very deeply into the idea of search. But audio search is one where you can get access to all kinds of audio resources online, pretty straightforward. Podcast search is relatively new. Locations of places where you can download audio files from the web and so forth. Auto's Custom is an interesting one. It's actually one of the newer ones in this family. It's a very, very niche type of thing. Basically what it is you can almost think of it as a subclass of local search. Local search is the kind of web service that powers this kind of application, where the information is sort of deeply rooted in geography, and you want to be able to say, there's a museum, it's located at this particular place, and maybe there's a time and a date associated with that as well, too. Auto's Custom takes that problem and generalizes it, or actually, whatever the opposite of generalizes is, makes it specific to the case of auto customizer shops, of which there are thousands and thousands all over the place. And the people who want to be able to discover this, we're building a community on Yahoo Autos specifically around customizers and guys who put the big foils on the back of their little Hondas and all that kind of stuff. Big flames on the side of your, AMC Gremlin, what have you. But ultimately, we're letting these guys get access to information about customizer shops. And so this gives you a sense as to how granular we're willing to get with respect to this information. And this wasn't actually that hard for us to build since we had these databases with this information in there already. And this is also really just a special case of the local search, the general case where you're looking for movies or museums or other types of events, that sort of thing. Content analysis, this is a very interesting one. Have you ever noticed when you've been in a search engine and maybe you misspell something, or the search engine sort of gives you a suggestion back as to what it is you might have been searching for? The idea there is to expose that as a service for whatever reason that a developer might want to use it. And so we have spelling suggestions, context search. Content analysis will give you back keywords for a piece of text, right? So if you ever had like a content taxonomy of some kind, and you wanted to go back and say, okay, given the fact that I have this 1,000-word essay, give me 5 most important words based on a content analysis of that so that I can make those into keywords. That's what content analysis will do. Image search, local search, you saw an example of. I'll show you an example of a couple of different kinds of image searches in a second. MyWeb is a product that gives you the ability to store and retrieve bookmarks on the web, which is not a new idea, but the thing about MyWeb that makes it a little bit interesting and original is the fact that there is a social sharing aspect to it. So you have the ability not only to share or to save all of your bookmarks to the web and get them from any machine anywhere, but you also have the ability to denote a list of friends who you want to share these bookmarks with. And you have granular control over how you get to share these things, who gets to see them, and so forth. You have the ability to categorize and tag bookmarks. You have the ability to make them private so that only you can see them. I don't know any kind of web browsing that would that would lend itself to making those things private. I'm thinking online blackjack during work hours, that kind of thing. But not that I would ever do anything like that. But that's the kind of thing that you get. So the MyWeb product today has an API that lets you search for links in your shared database, meaning the database that you've set up as well as everyone that you know that's in your friends list. Coming soon will be a read-write API, and I'm going to talk a little bit later in the talk about what we're doing to make these mostly read-only APIs read-write, because we're doing some interesting things there as far as that goes, and you're going to start seeing the results of that coming in the next couple of months. News search, Site Explorer. Site Explorer is the ability for you to provide information about the structure of your site to be able to facilitate searches. Video search, pretty straightforward. I want to provide some drill down into the web search API so you have an idea as to what we're doing here and the granularity that exists here. All the documentation for all this stuff, by the way, is at developer.yahoo.net. So if you want to go into more depth with this stuff, it's all up there for you. But ultimately, query is the one parameter that's common to all of our APIs. What is the information that you're looking for? Region is international region. What type do you want? Do you want to be able to, and this is sort of like and or on your search. Do you want all of the keywords to be matched, just a phrase, that sort of thing? How many results do you want back? You can actually get up to 1,000 results back per call. You can do paging, so start position. You can search for elements on the web in terms of format. The default is going to be everything, but if you want just HTML, you can ask for that. If you want just PowerPoint documents, you can ask for that, and we'll filter out according to what you ask for. What language, what country is this from, what site is this located from, and in fact, I'll show you an example of a pretty innovative example of site-specific search or domain-specific search. This is a company that is called Rolio. So these guys use the same Yahoo Search API that is available to you free on our site. And they have a very innovative take on web search. The idea behind the Rolio search is that you oftentimes want to limit your search to just one site, which is pretty easy, right? You can go to any search engine, type in a keyword, and then the word site, colon, and then the domain name of the site that you want to restrict your search to. Really, really easy, right? And that works on Yahoo, it works on Google, whatever. But what if you want to limit your search to 10 sites? Let's say that you are a cook and you want to search across 10 of your favorite recipe sites. That's a little bit trickier to do. And so what Rolio has done is they've made it very simple for anyone not only to create lists of sites that they want to search, but also to add this social aspect to it where you can also share these lists, which they call search roles. And you can see I've created 2 search roles up here. One for technology jobs and the other one for mashups. And so I'm going to go ahead and do a Rolio search for maps, see what comes up. I think we still come up first in the search. Yeah, we do. So, and you can see what's going on here is I'm searching our own site, developer.yahoo.net. I'm searching a site called programmableweb.com, which is an awesome resource for APIs and mashups and things like that. A bunch of different sites that are here. We have a site called Application Gallery, which resides at gallery.yahoo.com, which is where a lot of these things are starting to be posted and so forth. So it's kind of handy. It's kind of a neat way of sort of taking the notion of search where you just have one box and a button and sort of making it a little bit more granular, a little bit more specialized, especially for those kinds of searches that you do pretty frequently. And the important thing, again, too, is that Rolio is powered by not only Yahoo Search, but the Yahoo Search API. And the same Search API, the same web services that Rolio is using, you can use in your application as well today. So outputs from the Web Search API, total number of results, title, summary, URL, click URL, which is a little different, tracking information in there, the MIME type of the document that came back, when it was last modified. If we can get that information, we can't always get it. And then the cache, whether you can get to the cache of an old version of the document or not. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. Let's try this. Okay. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how to do this from within .NET now so you have an idea as to how you can go about utilizing this stuff. But the first thing I'm going to mention is that the easiest by far way of calling most of our APIs for which there is support in this library is to use Martin Brown's .NET wrapper, which we around the office colloquially refer to as the Brown wrapper. Martin doesn't know that we're calling it this yet, but we'll tell him someday, and I'm sure he'll get a kick out of it. He's an awesome guy. But basically what Martin did was he just said, okay, given the fact that we have these REST-based APIs, and that's another thing I should actually mention for a Microsoft developer audience, is that we don't really do SOAP. It's just sort of a design decision that we made early on. But that is actually, pretty straightforward still to make a call to our APIs. Almost all of our APIs are RESTful APIs. In other words, you're making a call to a URL, retrieving information, and parsing it that way. And as you probably know, one of the advantages of doing that, and I don't have a good example of this for right now, but one of the advantages of having a RESTful API is that it's really easy to debug in the browser. You have a lot of visual feedback, and you can sort of see what's going on. If you are looking for additional help and don't want to do the parsing, don't want to do the HTTP connection, that's just plumbing. There should be no joy in that for anyone, unless you're deeply strange. But ultimately, Martin's wrapper totally works great. It's very high performance. He actually uses some of the .NET code generation tools like XSD, .exe, and some of the other things there to be able to, he's generating wrapper classes directly from our schema. And so it's, he also provides these in both C# and VB as well too. So, and it's all under an open source license, so you can use it in your applications. Very generous and liberal. Let me go and show a basic example of using the brown wrapper to do a really simple call, and then we'll move on to some more interesting AJAX stuff here. So this is an image search example, and I wrote this in like an hour. It was really not even an hour, but at any rate, let's do a good keyword that isn't going to pull back too much porn. How about, it's not going to pull back any porn because you can tell it not to, but lovely sunset, right? So when I stumbled on that keyword, I was like, oh yeah, this is the one we use for demos, right? So basically, you can see it's an ASPX. It really just is very straightforward in terms of what it does. It just calls into the wrapper. Let me see if I can find the code here. I'll pop it open and you can see what it's looking like here. Okay, so the money shot here is really just 3 lines of code. Now, one of the things about the brown wrapper, and this is either a shortcoming of the library or it's a shortcoming of my understanding of how the library works, is that the result set doesn't appear to implement IEnumerable, which means that the data can't be bound directly to a grid, which is why I'm doing all this embarrassing junk down here where I iterate through the result set and dump it out into the page. If that is actually, and I didn't have time this week to really sort of drill down on why that is, but it should be very easy to change. If you wanted it to implement IEnumerable, you have the source code and it's an open source library, so you should be able to do that. And in fact, we may end up just doing that at some point because it would really work well for this particular use case where we just want to be able to say, bind this to a grid or bind this to some other control without having to, do it. I mean, this is only like 5 lines of code additional that we had to add for this, but here's the important part, the bits that involve actually getting the information. The first line here, you can see you're just creating an instance of a sort of factory class that he calls Yahoo Search Service, and that's the part that does all of the HTTP retrieval and the parsing of the XML document that comes back. And then each of the search APIs has its own typed result set object, which is kind of nice. And so you're basically saying, this is going to be an image search response. I'm going to make a call to this image search. Thank you. I know. Yeah, it's good. This image search method, I put in my application ID, which just identifies the developer. That's the parameter, telling it all types, 10 results, starting at result number 1, any format. And false is, what's false? I forgot. Well, it'll be a mystery for now. And then all I'm doing is just putting this in a loop, wrapping it up, saying create a bunch of image objects, dump it out onto the page, and you're good to go. That's pretty much it. Okay, now, and there's my attempt at actually binding this. So I could have made this a lot cleaner if the library supported IEnumerable, but again, it shouldn't be hard to adapt, and we'll look into doing that soon. So that's what you end up getting. This isn't AJAX, though, which means I'm a loser. If only I had an AJAX example. Well, in fact, I have 2. So we have an interesting thing, and I should probably show you a slide on this if I can. Okay, yeah, so that's my example. talked about maps. I'm going to skip around in my slides. So we've already talked about all this kind of stuff and zip down through this a little bit here. Yeah, let's back up and talk about the stuff that I feel like talking about right now, and we'll go back and salvage my slides in a second. So we have a method of serializing web services that is called JSON. Are any of you familiar with this? Okay, a couple of you. So in a lot of ways, JSON serialization is a sort of important key to creating responsive AJAX applications. It's not like the only thing that you need, and certainly you can do without it. But one of the interesting things that occurred to us pretty early on is that if you had a way to be able to make web services data natively available to JavaScript within the browser, that you could get a lot of advantages. Not only the fact that you can present the data in the browser without having to have like some kind of client-side JavaScript implemented XML parser, but you also have this ability to do certain other magic tricks that might not have ordinarily been possible. For example, one of the things that we do a lot of are web applications that don't require a server proxy, which is kind of nutty if you think about it, but it actually doesn't really violate any rules or laws of the universe or anything like that. It just sort of utilizes what's there, and it's I wouldn't call it a hack. It's sort of hackish, but it works really well, and we officially support it. So let me talk through how this works and see if it all makes sense, and we'll go through this example, and you can see how this ends up being a sort of tool that you can use to make our web services go into your AJAX applications. So in a lot of applications, web applications that utilize data from lots of different sources, in other words, any kind of architecture that is going to be based on services where you're calling out to Yahoo or some other web service or whatever, you wind up having to proxy the data, assemble it on some web server, put it into HTML, and then blast it out to the browser, right? And there's all kinds of issues with that. One is that it can generate a lot of latency, but another big problem is that if you are hosting a website on myserver.com that utilizes a Yahoo web service located at api.yahoo.com, you don't have the ability, without a proxy, without some go-between, to let JavaScript on the browser client make a call directly to api.yahoo.com, right? That's a cross-browser security restriction. It won't let you do that. Modern browsers won't let you do that. So the dilemma and the solution that developers have utilized typically is, in a world in which I need to write responsive AJAX-style applications that have the ability to call directly to a third-party web service from the browser client, from JavaScript, how do I do that in a world in which the cross-browser security restrictions won't let me do it? JavaScript developers have a variety of language-specific proxies available to them, and in fact, Atlas has its own way of doing this, where you can basically forward a request on from the client application in JavaScript to .NET or to AJAX on the server side, which then will call out to api.yahoo.com, retrieve the data, and put it into the browser. But what this page does is something totally different. It actually eliminates the need for a proxy at all by getting around the cross-browser domain restriction. And the way it does that, and people usually applaud when I say that. So actually, let me show you how this works first. And the data comes right back. Now, there's no server proxy on this. This is a direct conversation between my web browser and api.yahoo.com. And I'll show you an example in the source code here of how this works. Now, it is possible to use a function to retrieve information from Yahoo Web Services. And you can retrieve information in XML, obviously, this JSON format, which is serialized JavaScript. Or we also actually provide another method of serialization, which is serialized PHP, which I won't go into at all here today, but is kind of similar. It just basically saves you a parsing step. So what we do in the JavaScript here is we are taking web services data that has been serialized in this JSON format, and we're inserting it into a dynamically generated script tag in the header of the page. Right? That's the sort of hackish part of this. It's totally kosher. It's supported in all modern browsers. There is one thing about this that you have to be careful about, and that is that you have to trust the sender. If you're making a web services call to some arbitrary person or whatever, they have access to the DOM of your page, which can cause security issues. They have access to the user's cookies, other stuff too, right? It's cool if you know that you can trust the provider and that they're not going to do anything icky, but bear in mind that if script kiddies start providing JSON web services, then you have to sort of be wary before you sort of take advantage of them. Okay, so another kind of neat thing about the way this works is that the information comes back asynchronously in the form of a callback. And to see how this works, I'm going to show you this URL that we're creating. This is the standard Yahoo image search web service. And you can see as I highlight out here, this is the app ID that identifies the developer. I say output equals JSON to indicate that what I want back is not XML, but serialized JavaScripts. And what's coming back here specifically are arrays of arrays, right? And so all you need to do to be able to get at the data is to parse back through these arrays. And you can see that this is being done up here, right? Up here? Yes. Then, and this is a really long line, so I'm kind of scrolling out to the right here. So I say output equals JSON, and then I say callback equals, and I provide the name of a function that exists in JavaScript in my page. And then finally out here, I am dynamically assembling a query string based on the contents of a input control on the page. And then what happens is that this function, when it's executed in the page, creates this dynamically generated script tag that includes this JSON data embedded in it. And then when the information is loaded, it executes this callback function called getData. And all it does here is iterate through the results that came back from the image search and plugs them in to the page as thumbnails, providing what you see here. Does that make sense? Did I see someone's hand a minute ago with a question, or did I answer it? Yeah, can I? Let's see, inferior. There we go. All right, Control plus like that. Sorry, is that good? Okay. Okay, so it makes sense? All right, let me see where I left off in my slides just in case. We'll talk about this stuff in a second here. A couple other APIs. Actually, let's go back and talk about these, and I'll go back to some more demos in a second here. We're doing okay on time. Okay, so I talked about the maps building block APIs, geocoding, map images, traffic, and local search. One of the things that was mentioned in a talk yesterday, and again I alluded to this, which is the sidebar talk, is the fact that we have a pluggable music engine. And the Yahoo Music Engine is an awesome product if you like music, basically subscription, purchase music, listen to radio, all that stuff. But for developers, it's particularly cool because you have the ability to create JavaScript or C++ plugins that run within the context of the music engine. So you have the ability to show web content to a user, maybe based on what's in his library or what he's listening to at that moment, to provide additional information for other things related to the music that's going on, and you have the ability to help organize and so forth. So I don't have a demo of that for today, but I just wanted to mention it because it is sort of part of the story here. Trip Planner is our first travel API. This is not the ability to search a database of trips per se. In other words, you can't use this, at least not yet, to look up airfares and hotel rates and things like that. But what it actually is a link into a database of community information. The idea being that I can go to travel.yahoo.com/trip, save information about things I want to do and places I want to go in a particular locale, share that with other users, and then I can also write an application that goes in and gets that information, adds to it, and that sort of thing. Shopping API is a related one. The idea there is we have a comparison shopping site at shopping.yahoo.com. The developer site for that is developer.yahoo.net/shopping. And basically the idea is retrieve information about products, prices, categories, things like that. The 2.0 version of the shopping API, which we just released, gives you the ability to drill down in a more granular fashion with respect to categorization, different sizes of thumbnail images, and things like that. And the reason why this is kind of an exciting API is that this is going to be one of the first APIs that will start to fulfill a theme that's going to become more prevalent with our APIs and our platform as the year goes on, where we'll be providing monetization opportunities for developers. So today, if you are a developer with a high traffic website or a website that has unique content, something that satisfies a specific niche, you can use the shopping API to syndicate product information on your website, display it, and if a visitor to your website clicks through to Yahoo Shopping and then clicks through to the merchant, we will provide a generous revenue share for the money that we get paid from the merchant to you. And so we're just starting to see these interesting business models based on APIs. We'll be seeing a lot more of these over the course of the next 6 to 12 months as we roll out new things to provide ways for you to monetize these applications. But this is a beta program, so you can apply to it right now. It's not 100% open yet, but if you want more information on it, shopping.yahoo.com/syndication. Okay, let's show some Flickr examples really quick here. Flickr is our photo sharing site, and a lot of the coolest applications that you can see pertain to Flickr, mainly because Flickr's had an API for a long time, and it has a very passionate developer community. This is called the Flickr-related tag browser. And it uses the Flickr API to be able to display photos in a way that not only gives you access to information, and I don't know what's going on there, but it's always nerve-wracking to do a demo based on photos that you randomly load from the internet. I think every time I do this, it probably takes, well, yeah. So basically, and the neat thing about this is that it also shows related tags, right? So if I want to see, if I stayed at the Mandalay Bay, let's say, you can see that Mandalay Bay comes up as a related tag. And we're going to see some, I don't even want to know what that is. But, really, see, you just don't, yeah. If the photos that are coming up right now are anything like my bachelor party, yeah. So anyway, that's Flickr-related tags. This is a neat application called Flickr Graph. So Flickr, in addition to being a place for your photos, is also a place for your friends. And so the idea behind Flickr is not just, here I am uploading photos and sharing them, but I am sharing them with friends. I'm creating little communities of people who are linked to each other, and you have linkages between your friends and friends of friends and so forth. So I'll click on old Simon's picture down here, and you can see that I can now look at his friends. And I can sort of drill into this in a little bit more depth to basically, because one of the key things about this is sort of exploring, what it is that your friends are doing, where are they traveling, what are they taking pictures of, and all that kind of stuff. And so this is just a way to basically, and this was done in Flash, was basically a way to, browse the network of friends that you have in a way that is very jiggly. Jiggly is a feature of this, right? So, Color Picker is a design tool that people use to see what colors will look good in certain contexts. And the way that this works is it does an analysis of various pictures that have been uploaded to Flickr and provides a list based on the color that you choose. So if you want to use this shade of sort of yellowish green and you want to see what this looks like in real life, that's how it works. And you can change the hue a little bit here to go for something a little darker. And this is all pulling information back from Flickr in real time. So it's neat, I think, anyway. Do I have one more here? Flickr calendar. Last time I used this, it was a little slow. One of the tricky parts about doing demos of other people's stuff that's not running locally is sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. Today, it don't. But anyway, the idea here is pretty neat. The idea here is that you have the ability to take Flickr photos and arrange them on a calendar by date. So if you want to see, which pictures you took when, oh, here comes some. We did a little Disneyland trip on, at the end of this month, and there's my daughter going crazy at Yahoo, and that's the day we walked the dog and all that stuff. So you're basically, have the ability to browse your Flickr photos by date rather than by, the order in which they were taken or by tag or whatever. And the other neat thing about this, remember this little calendar widget that you see here, because this is actually a mashup of two different sets of Yahoo technologies. Flickr is one, and this calendar control, which is a JavaScript-based control that we provide for free, is another. I'm going to mention upcoming.org briefly. I don't have a demo on it, but upcoming.org is an event sharing community. So have you ever heard information, let's say, about a rock concert and wondered how many of your friends were also planning on going to that rock concert? Or did you ever want to set up a group outing to a particular event, but you weren't, email just didn't really cut it in terms of an organizational tool. You need to be able to share information not only pertaining to what the event is, but where it's located, who else wants to go, all that kind of stuff. And so that's what upcoming.org is. Upcoming.org joined Yahoo in 2005. They have their own set of web services that are linked to from the developer site, but for now it's sort of a separate platform. Just wanted to mention it because it's there and it's pretty neat and innovative. We're pretty enthused about what we're seeing people starting to do with upcoming.org, and we want to see a lot more of it. I mentioned the MyWeb product before, the ability to save and share bookmarks online. Delicious is another site that joined Yahoo in the last year that has a mission that's actually very similar to MyWeb. In fact, they're overlapping. They're not the same products, but they're overlapping in a lot of ways. Both sites give you the ability to save bookmarks to the web, share them, syndicate them, label them, tag them, and that sort of thing. Delicious has a read-write API today. MyWeb has search today, and it's going to have a read-write API coming soon. And in fact, I haven't mentioned this to anyone yet, but when the API for Delicious and MyWeb comes out, it will be unified. So you'll be able to code against the same API, and you'll be able to pick, like with a parameter, where you want it to go. Do you want it to go to MyWeb? Do you want to go to Delicious or whatever? So you'll be able to create interesting new integrations with bookmark sharing. Okay, so I mentioned a lot of the things that we were doing for JavaScript and AJAX development. One of the things I wanted to call out is the fact that we have a specific content center on the developer site called the JavaScript JavaScript Developer Center. All of the documentation pertaining to the JSON stuff I was demoing earlier, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff pertaining to some of our JavaScript user interface libraries, our AJAX postback library, things like that, are all up there on the web at developer.yahoo.net/javascript. In addition, we have published recently a design pattern library. And what this basically is years of work by Yahoo designers and developers that basically provide prescriptive guidance for solutions to design problems. This is particularly meaningful in the AJAX era because one of the things that you see people starting to do with AJAX applications is to provide, draggy-droppy ways of doing stuff without thinking in terms of, what happens if this browser doesn't support it? What happens if the user, because of a disability or whatever, doesn't have the ability to do, a slider with a drag drop? And so one of the things that the design pattern libraries do is they, state a problem, an information management problem, state a solution in terms of a pattern, how it is that you can solve this problem using design. Provide screenshots for various Yahoo properties, things that we've run across and solutions that we've come up with, and then caveats. What is it about this solution that you might need to take into consideration for accessibility purposes, things like that. One other nice thing about this is that we're providing it under a Creative Commons license, so you can use the information freely, modify it. A lot of people, when we first released this, said, oh, this is great, I'm actually having to do something like this for my company's intranet, and this will provide a great start. That's exactly the reason why we made this available, because we really wanted to have conversations going around accessibility and good design and all that kind of stuff. So that's all there at developer.yahoo.net/ypatterns. Okay, and that brings us to the user interface library, which is also part of the JavaScript Developer Center. So the idea here is that we wanted to provide a library of JavaScript libraries that you could download, use freely, incorporate into your applications. Some of the things that exist in here include some user interface controls, like you saw the calendar control a second ago, a cross-browser AJAX library, so HTTP, postback, that kind of stuff, some drag and drop and animation libraries. For .NET developers, a lot of the stuff that you see here, frankly, is going to be overlap with what you get in AJAX, but some of it isn't. And in fact, there's no reason why you should have to pick one over the other. And in fact, some of the examples that we're working on right now will show how to work with Atlas and our AJAX libraries in a pretty straightforward way. In fact, why don't I whip up a quick example here of an Atlas application that uses our services, and then I'll go and do some more examples of the other UI library stuff that I have here. So this sort of poorly laid out form, and in fact, I'm not even going to do the visual design here. What I wanted to do with this is I wanted to show an Atlas example with our web services. And I think I have this here, yeah. So, and this might be a little contrived, but it does show off Atlas pretty well, and it does show off this notion of partial updates to the page, right? It's pretty common that, although it's very easy with, post back and page state and things like that in ASP.NET, to be able to retain the state of the page through a post back, and that's one of the great innovations of ASP.NET. A lot of times you just don't want to have to post back the whole page, especially when the page is containing, a ton of data. And so to give you an example of what we're talking about here, I'm going to do a search, and the way I did this page, this is an Atlas, and I set this up in such a way that I can do an image search, and I can do a web search, and I can do them side by side. And because of partial postbacks in Atlas, I can see the web search results on one column, and I can see the image search results in the other column. And it's kind of funny sometimes when you look at these, because when you do an image search for airplane, you get airplanes. When you do a web search for airplane, you get Airplane the movie. So there's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and all that stuff. But then, if you want to do something slightly different, you can see that the web search stuff didn't refresh, which is what we wanted. Oh, sad looking thing there. Let's get rid of that photo. Much happier. So, and you can see that each time it comes back, the date stamp up here changes, right? And you're basically seeing what it is that got updated. So let's take a look at the code and see how I did that. This, by the way, I wrote on Tuesday. So if you're going to ask me heavy-duty questions about Atlas and how this all works, I'm going to probably go, I don't know. So this is actually, let's look at the declarative parts first. We'll go down to the bottom here. And I really did this in a cheesy way. There's no binding here. There's no fanciness with data grids or anything like that. It's just a whole bunch of hard-coded junk here. And all I really wanted to do was to demonstrate the post-back stuff. At some point in the future, I'll probably revisit this demo and say, figure out a way to make this bind and all that kind of stuff. But you can see I'm using Atlas update panels. And I have two of them. One's the first column, the other's the right column. Content template, which is just a bunch of labels, or actually image controls with a label at the top. And then I'm using Atlas triggers down here at the bottom. And all I'm really doing is saying when the search button or the image search button gets clicked, then update this update panel. Really, really simple. And then this is the web search update panel. Again, exact same thing. The only difference here is that I have hyperlink label, hyperlink label, hyperlink label, totally hard-coded. Tried to make this thing the simplest thing that could possibly work with very little sophistication, as are most of the code examples that I do. And so the part of this that does the actual work is up here. So this is the code that goes off when you hit the image search button. You are going to update the label to indicate that it went off. I'm using the brown wrapper here on the server side to do the actual search. And then the brown wrapper blasts the HTML back down using the Atlas AJAX HTTP postback, and then using that to populate the properties of those image controls that are in that update panel. Really, really, really simple. Web search, exact same deal. I update the label. I kick off 2 lines of code to instantiate the brown wrapper to retrieve the information from the web search service from Yahoo, and then text, URL, text, text, navigate URL. Really, really straightforward, and you wind up with something happy like this. So pretty nice. I have a URL that I'll give you at the end of this presentation, and I'll upload all this code so you can take a look at it if you want. The brown wrapper is you can download from mgbrown.net. Okay, so this is the sort of complete overview of the UI components that we provide. And again, some of these are overlapping with Atlas. Some of them are going to be complementary. I think the animation ones are actually going to be the ones where you're going to find the least amount of overlap. So if you're looking for something that you might not have access to, and this, I don't know how this is going to show up on this, but these are all of the basic examples that come in the documentation. And basically, the key thing to remember when you're looking at these examples is that this is 100% dynamic HTML. There's nothing funny about this in terms of, like, there's no flash here, there's no none of that kind of junk. It's basically just, you know, HTML. So there's a couple of different modes and a couple of different examples of how to do this. Let me try and find something a little bit more impressive here. Movement. The ability to take one element, and again, this is just a div, right? That's just shaped like a square, but you can do this with anything. You can do this with an image. You can do this with whatever you want, right? And the nice kind of thing, I don't know if you saw that, but I don't know if this can replay, but did you notice how when I clicked on the gray box, it sort of eased in when it hit the red box? So it kind of slows down as it approaches its final destination. So there's a lot of really neat touches to this, and there's a lot of kind of cool stuff that you can do with a very minimal amount of code. This is basically like 10 lines of JavaScript to be able to do this once you have the libraries linked in there. Zinc. So a lot of the stuff is really straightforward, and of course the source is all there. So basically the way these guys work, and I'll blow this up again so you can actually see it, is you're linking in a few of our libraries up here. This is a namespace manager, and then an event handler, and then a DOM handler, and then the animation control or the animation library. You're then creating in your script an endpoint, some attributes, creating an instance of an animation object, and then telling it asynchronously, of course, to just go for it. And that's how all of that animation that you just saw gets kicked off. So really, really simple to do. A couple of other things that I should call out in this. Connection Manager is our version of the Atlas HTTP, XML HTTP postback. If you're using Atlas, probably not useful to you, but still worthwhile taking a look at, particularly if you are looking for something that is very well tested across a bunch of different browsers and so forth. DOM, drag and drop. I think Atlas has drag and drop capabilities as well, too. Calendar, you saw an example of before. If you're an ASP.NET developer, you've had a calendar control that's great for years and years, so may or may not be worthwhile to you. Slider control, tree view control, this is actually worth taking a look at, mainly because some of the stuff that we did to show off the slider control is kind of neat. So I'll go down here, and all this was done in HTML and JavaScript using our library. So you can see as I go through here, I have the ability to change different colors and so forth, and this is all just done. And to show that this is JavaScript, we can sort of select it, HTML and JavaScript. And again, these are all just really basic examples that are in the documentation. So again, pure HTML and JavaScript. Tree view control is another one that you get in ASP.NET 2.0. So if you want a client-side tree view control, we have one. It's right there. We're going to keep updating these as well, too. So we're going to churn pretty regularly. Our next drop is probably going to be in April for this. So we'll add some more controls, do some bug fixes, that kind of thing. Okay, so we talked about JSON serialization. I won't go through this again. I kind of jumped the gun because I was so excited about it. I don't think there's anything on this slide that I forgot. So in the last few minutes, I want to talk about a few forward-looking things and a few things we're working on to build out the platform in even more depth. One of the important things that we feel about at Yahoo is that it's not just about finding information on the web. It's about sharing information on the web. It's about creating new information, sharing with your friends, sharing with the whole world. And this notion is really important to us. It's one of the things that we believe distinguishes us as a company and as a culture from other companies that are doing similar things on the web. And it's one of the things that we are building out a platform to accomplish, not only for developers, but also for users. This notion of a participation platform is something that you'll be hearing a lot about. And as we sort of build this out, you'll be able to participate as well, too, by building these elements into your sites. So the idea then is to help users not only find information, but to use it effectively, to share it with friends and family and other people, and to expand knowledge, to be able to take that information and to go out in multiple dimensions with it. So to be able to build a platform based on that, we need to be able to do a couple of things. Most, but not all, of the APIs and services and things that I've demoed here today have been, for the most part, read-only. I retrieve information, I can display it in some interesting way, and that's really great. And we've built an interesting developer community around that today. But the next generation, the next wave of web services that you're going to start seeing from Yahoo are going to address the missions of using the information, sharing the information, and expanding the information. And in order to do that, we're going to need web services that are bidirectional, that let you send information as well as retrieve information, that are personalized, that give you your information, not just information from the web or someone else, and that is secure, and that gives users control over their experience, over their personal information, over their Yahoo accounts, and so forth. So to solve all of these problems, we're going through and looking at ways to provide access to personalized data for third-party developers utilizing Yahoo Web Services. So just to illustrate what I was just talking about, the notion of retrieving information from search, this is not bidirectional, it's unidirectional. I'm retrieving information only. I'm not sending new information in, right? And there's no personalized angle to this. It's basically just web search, right? But what if we had the ability to say, imagine Yahoo Photos, right? The biggest photo sharing site in the world with 34 million users and I think over 1 billion photos. In a world in which you build an application that retrieves Yahoo Photos, wouldn't it also be nice to give people the ability to upload photos, organize photos, tag them, and share them? This is the bidirectional part of where we need to go with the platform and where we will be going soon. So the way we're going to accomplish this is with technologies around authentication that make authentication through third-party websites easy for developers to implement and secure for users to have control over who gets access to their information and their personal data. The first product that you will see pertaining to this is we're calling browser-based authentication for Yahoo Web Services. The way this works is that a user discovers a third-party website. When the website needs the user to authenticate, they authenticate with Yahoo, not with the third-party site. And that's a very important point because if we permit Yahoo users to authenticate with any third-party site, it opens wide up to phishing and all kinds of evil scams and stuff. And so users will authenticate with Yahoo and only with Yahoo. This will be accomplished in this scenario through a redirect. So you get redirected to a specific login site for Yahoo, which then does the login as a two-phase process. The first phase is the authentication step, and the second phase is to ask the user a detailed question about what it is they're about to authorize the third party to do. If this third-party website is going to give is going to get access to the user's photos, then we need to tell the user that. If it's going to provide read-write access to their photos, then we need to tell the user that too. If it's going to provide access to some other personalized web service on Yahoo, then we have to tell the user as much as we can about that and to tell them what the potential consequences for that is, but in a way that's pretty straightforward. And that's what that second page will do there. So after the user's authenticated, after the user's given permission, we will then redirect the user back to the third-party developer's website. And that third-party developer will then have an encrypted token that represents the user. They don't get any information about the user's password for sure. They don't actually even get information about the user's user ID either, because that provides all kinds of vulnerabilities as well. But they do get the ability to use the encrypted token to make API calls and retrieve the user's personal data because they got permission to do so from the user themselves. Okay? So a lot of times, especially in the Microsoft universe, people look at this and they say, so this is kind of like Passport, right? And the answer is kind of, sort of, but not really. It works like Passport in the sense that we're doing redirect-based, token-based authentication, but it's not like Passport or InfoCard in the sense that we're not building this solution as a general-purpose single sign-on for the web. That's not a problem that we're interested in solving. We are interested in making it easy for developers to enable users to get access to their Yahoo user-generated content through their applications, and that's all this is. Okay? Yes. The question was, is this similar to what Flickr's been doing with browser-based authentication? The answer is yes, although it differs in a couple of key ways. Most of the differences are sort of minor implementation details. But the other thing about the Flickr solution is that the Flickr solution is only usable for Flickr. This will be usable for any Yahoo property that goes against the Yahoo user database. So the first product that you will see based on this will be a Photos API that you'll see in the next couple of months, and I'll talk about more that'll appear later.
How long is the token valid for?
2 weeks. Unless, the question is how long is the token valid for? The answer is initially 2 weeks, unless the user revokes permissions. The user has the ability to revoke permission from any application at any time.
So even if we store it, in our database, in 2 weeks, we hire a request to Yahoo, we get denied, we send them to...
The user will be redirected and they go through the flow again, right? There's also one other edge case around that, which is that if your application requests additional permissions, in other words, let's say that you start off as a photo sharing site or a photo community or something like that, and you grow out to adopt additional Yahoo APIs, then that will invalidate all of your users and they'll need to authenticate again. It's a pretty low maintenance thing. I mean, they just have to go through the login flow again, which most Yahoo users go through, every week or every other week anyway. But it's just something that makes it more secure. Okay, so we'll go back to browser-based authentication in a second, and we'll talk about the upcoming products that we have that will implement it. We've only got a couple minutes left, and I want to leave time for a few more questions at the end if you have any. But one of the other things that we are providing for developers is a place to show off your applications. This is a site that we launched in alpha about a week and a half ago called Yahoo Application Gallery. This resides at gallery.yahoo.com. It is a very rough alpha, but we wanted to make it available as soon as we could to get feedback on from the community on it, as well as to just sort of get it out there in a timeline that made sense. But it's still being worked on. Basically, you can use it to upload information about your applications today and to publish them to the web. Really, this is intended to be a consumer-facing site for developers to be able to connect with consumers that use Yahoo. And when this goes into beta, we'll be promoting this more broadly to Yahoo users. So if you ever wanted to use Yahoo to drive lots and lots of users to your interesting application, this will be the way for you to do it. And this is also intended to be a single place, a single sort of point of contact for any application that uses Yahoo technology, whether that's Flickr or our UI libraries or any of our search websites or maps or whatever. All that stuff is sort of there. A couple of interesting features about Application Gallery. Users will have the ability to rate and review applications that developers upload. The search engine for Application Gallery is Yahoo Search, so you'll have powerful capabilities to be able to discover applications. In addition, we'll have a tag-based taxonomy for applications so that you can assign tags to your applications like maps, Duluth, widget, whatever, and people will be able to discover applications that way. So this goes far beyond anything that we've provided to date to be able to show off these applications. And here's a screenshot. This is actually not what it looks like in production, but it's pretty close. And this is at gallery.yahoo.com. Okay, so I mentioned that we're sort of on the cusp of a new set of APIs based on this idea of a participation platform. I wanted to talk about these for a few minutes as I get done here, and then I'll have time for questions afterwards. So as you may know, Yahoo has an online calendaring solution at calendar.yahoo.com. This will have a authentication-enabled API coming soon, within the next few months. And the idea here is that it's very common for people to want to be able to store their calendar information in a central location, to be able to get access to their calendar from anywhere in the world. The Yahoo Calendar product has actually always had the ability to give individuals and groups the ability to share their calendars, which is kind of a neat feature. And so if you have, let's say, a softball league, and you want to be able to put the dates of all of your games in a calendar and then publish that and just give people a simple URL so that they can go to it, maybe they can annotate it, change the dates, whatever, you can do that with the Yahoo Calendar product today. What the Calendar API will then give you the ability to do is to take that information, embed it into a website, utilize it in a totally new context, but again, ultimately with the idea of participating and sharing, not just storing information on the web and searching for it and all that kind of stuff. So like I mentioned, this will support browser-based authentication. This will provide support for JSON serialization too, so you'll be able to use this to create Atlas applications and AJAX applications and so forth. And then we'll provide other formats for this information, including the iCal format, which is like the de facto standard for calendar interchange as well today. Talked about Yahoo Photos. That will be coming soon, probably in the April timeframe. And this will give you the ability to store and retrieve photos from Yahoo Photos using browser-based authentication. And that's pretty much it. If there are any questions, yeah.
One of the things we're seeing with a lot of search systems out there is the Google suggests like search, where as you start typing in, you'll start to get results.
Right. So the question is, can you do like an autocomplete style AJAX type thing using our search API? And I think the answer is yes. I think the way you would end up doing that is just putting a timer behind the interface and saying if there's a delay of say half a second, then kind of do a fetch back for the information, display it. That's pretty trivial to do if you have any AJAX chops to be able to do. And you can do that with any data set, whether it's Google or Yahoo, it's all kind of there. We should have an example of how to do that because it seems like it's the kind of thing that people want to do pretty frequently. There's stuff out there. If you do a web search for Yahoo Search API, or if you go to developer.yahoo.net/search, you can see a gallery of existing examples that we have there. And I don't have a link to one right now, but I've seen many examples using our API of people doing that. So, yeah, question?
Well, hi. First of all, I'd just like to commend you for doing this. This is fantastic. Lots of rich stuff here, and looking forward to exploring it. But my question is more a business question. How are you planning on monetizing this, and for a developer to take advantage of it? I know, for example, Google has said that they're going to they reserve the right to put advertising on their maps and so on. Are you going to do some of the same things?
So we feel strongly that developers should be able to build businesses on top of this. We are providing commercial exceptions for developers on sort of a trial basis today. Earlier you saw a demonstration of a site called Rolio. They are operating under a commercial exception, and they're showing Yahoo ads as a way of sharing revenue between Yahoo and that business. So we feel really strongly that in order to have an ecosystem, it's not enough to just provide cool toys for people to play with. An ecosystem is, we will know that we have arrived at a mature ecosystem when people start putting Yahoo APIs on their resumes, and when people start creating more businesses using Yahoo APIs in addition to the few that exist today. We want to see a whole series of businesses and startups and sites that are monetizable flourish. Sharing advertising is one way to do that. Affiliate marketing, like what I was mentioning before with the shopping paid syndication beta, is another way to do that. And there are yet other ways on top of that, and we'll have more discussions. We're going to basically make it very, very easy for you to monetize access to sites that are built based on the API, and we're working very hard on that today. So, yep.
Yeah, that was about the perfect lead-in to my question. As people start building businesses on this, how does Yahoo formalize SLAs or provide performance and reliability guarantees, because this is going to be mission critical for somebody?
Right, so it's mission critical for us too, and that's one of the things about an ecosystem, right, is that we're all living in the same forest, right, and if somebody mucks up the forest, then it gets stinky for everybody. So ultimately, we're not providing, certainly not for our non-commercial APIs today, we're not providing any kind of SLAs for the non-commercial APIs, the ones that you use for free because, they're free. For the commercial APIs, if an SLA is important to you, we can talk about that. I can tell you that SLAs are expensive. So ultimately, the key thing about this is that you're using the same technology and the same platform as we're using. So if it screws up for you, it screws up for us. And we have a powerful motivation to make sure that the trains keep running on time. So, yeah.
When the application gallery moves a little further away from alpha, will there be a way for people to monetize their apps? So something, can someone post something and find a way to sell it?
That's a great question. It is one that has come up a couple of times. We are so far away from being done with the application gallery that it isn't even on our radar yet. But at the end of the day, I would say that if you have a commercial application today, like Rolio, for example, is listed in the application gallery, you're probably thinking more along the lines of packaged software as opposed to like an ad-driven website kind of thing, I think. But Rolio is an application gallery today. They were one of the first developers to list their sites in there. I would say, though, that if you're looking for the ability to go soup to nuts, where you discover an application in the gallery and then you click on a little link that says pay for it here, and then you sort of go somewhere else. That's kind of a part of the beast that is sort of better handled by Digital River and other people who are kind of have a core competency in the process of people paying for software online and that kind of stuff. It's conceivable that we would do it at some point, but it's not on the roadmap today. So, okay, yeah. One last question. I think I'm almost out of time. Yeah, so I think the idea of developer productivity across all languages and platforms was really important to the engineers that architected the sort of REST standard at Yahoo. I think that from my experience with this as a .NET developer, as well as my experience being an evangelist and a person who has had to deal with lots of different types of developers ever since SOAP sort of came on people's radar screens around 2000 and 2001, I would say that REST is a great choice for every language and platform, and has been for some time and continues to be today. And SOAP is a great choice for .NET and some other languages and platforms, but it's not a great choice for every language and platform. For example, up until very recently, SOAP was a terrible choice for PHP. And so these are the kinds of things that inform the engineers and architects' decisions around Yahoo with respect to what they're going to do. Now, that having been said, the amount of developer productivity that you gain or lose, whether you're using SOAP or REST or whatever, we think, anyway, is minuscule, particularly for simple web services like the kind that we're providing today. So hopefully it works out okay for you. And at the end of the day, and in fact, I didn't demo this, but I wrote a SOAP wrapper around one of our APIs, and it took me about 15 minutes. So if you really want SOAP, it's like 5 lines of code in .NET. Just to show you that I could do it. Okay, I need to get off the stage. So if any of you have any other questions, I'll be here for another 10 or 15 minutes or so, and then I have to fly off to the airport. But thank you so much for coming. I've really appreciated the opportunity to speak with you today.